Prince Harry's ongoing slide into complete madness has taken another turn overnight because he's now accusing Buckingham Palace, wait for this, of sabotage, of allegedly wanting him dead simply because they pointed out that he's being offered perfectly safe accommodation inside the perfectly secure Buckingham Palace. Now, it's not his father directly. No, King Charles isn't the one he's blaming. According to Harry, it's the palace courtiers, the people around the king who are supposedly behind this sabotage campaign, and apparently, they want him gone. And that's not all. Harry now sees himself as the new Salman Rushdie. Yes, you heard that correctly. Prince Harry genuinely believes he can be compared to one of the world's greatest authors, a man who spent decades living under an Islamist fatwa and even lost an eye because of it. I'll say it again. Prince Harry's downward spiral into madness, which I genuinely believe is being fueled by wacky backpacks and psychedelics, as I discussed on yesterday's show, is becoming even more extreme, folks. So today we're going to break it all down with a royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz. But this latest revelation, that Harry believes there's some kind of palace plot to get rid of him, isn't an exaggeration. You'll remember that in his interview with the British Bashing Corporation last year, he openly accused the palace of wanting him dead. Now, this latest briefing has been given to Jack Royston. You'll probably know him as Newsweek's royal correspondent. For a long time, he acted as a complete mouthpiece for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. In recent weeks and months, he's still been taking their briefings. But to be fair, he has also started calling out some of their more bizarre behavior. But you're not going to believe what Harry's team are now telling him. Take a listen.
That it upset Harry, that he is certainly of the opinion that it was the palace who briefed out that one of the royal residences that Harry might stay in is Buckingham Palace. That, you know, the kind of Sussex camp spews that came from the palace. By briefing that out to the media, they damaged the usefulness of that offer, because if everybody knows that the Sussex family might stay at Buckingham Palace, then they're worried that photographers will then be there camped out on all the different entrances, waiting to try and get the photo of Harry and Meghan arriving with their kids in the back of the car. Harry's worried that the kids are then going to get papped, maybe through the window. They were upset that that got briefed. But then, I think the palace, the perspective internally within the palace is that perhaps there's been quite a lot of noise coming out from the other side. And their view is they've offered Harry accommodation. The accommodation comes with the police protection. You know, the accommodation is itself protected by the police. And that is all they can do. The palace perspective is they can't tell the Home Office to give Harry close protection.
Exactly, Jack Royston. This is why you simply cannot repeat Prince Harry's claims to the world with a straight face, because they are completely absurd. There is no conspiracy inside the British royal family to have Prince Harry killed or put him in danger. In fact, the entire reason he was offered accommodation at Buckingham Palace was to make sure he was protected and secure. Honestly, this is becoming deeply concerning. I think that offer should now be taken off the table. Harry needs professional help, and I genuinely don't believe this visit is in anyone's best interests anymore. Royally Sage summed it up perfectly. RAVEC's decision isn't anything new. The Harkles have known about it for quite some time. A handful of reporters were honest enough to admit the appeal was unlikely to succeed, despite all the Harkle propaganda. What we're witnessing now is emotional blackmail aimed at a man who is publicly battling cancer. The Harkles are trash. And according to Taz, made another important point. Harry still seems convinced that his father can step in and change everything, even though he simply can't. So instead, Harry is using the children as leverage to hurt and manipulate his father, just as he did with Queen Elizabeth II when he refused to attend Prince Philip's memorial service and withheld the children from visiting. What's really fascinating, though, is Harry insisting that he isn't actually angry with King Charles. This is where his bizarre mental gymnastics come into play. It's exactly the same pattern we saw with Queen Elizabeth II. No, it wasn't the Queen herself, he claimed. Apparently, it was everyone around her, the very people who were simply carrying out her wishes. So let's be clear. Harry says he doesn't blame Charles directly. Fine. According to him, it's only the people surrounding the king who are supposedly working to undermine and sabotage him. Just watch this. While Harry and Meghan continue demanding special treatment and launching attacks on the royal family, much of the mainstream media still runs cover for them. Here on Outspoken, I call it exactly as I see it, with no bias. So make sure you subscribe now for the full story every single day.
You know, what was so close to being a really positive step for Harry's relationship with his father now become kind of toxic, and maybe they can still get it back on track. My understanding is that Harry is not angry with his father and does not blame any of this on Charles himself. You know, it's a familiar pattern. And in the past, this kind of toxic pattern of events has led to damage to the relationship, ultimately, one way or another. And so it just feels like a very familiar place to be, that efforts are being made towards reconciliation. There is something really positive on the table here, but there's something that's ruining it, basically. That's stopping Harry from reaching out and grabbing this olive branch, or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a cliche. We use it all the time, but it is a very handy way to describe it. You know, there's an opportunity potentially to meet the king. There's an opportunity to be on the inside of a royal residence. And Harry just has to find a way to persuade himself that it's safe to take that opportunity.
But as Taz pointed out, bringing a bit of common sense back into the conversation, Harry does receive police protection. He simply has to provide 30 days' notice before a visit. Each trip is assessed individually, and the level of security provided depends on what he'll be doing while he's here. What Harry actually wants is round-the-clock armed protection, the same level of security that only the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales receive. Princess Anne, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, and the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh don't receive the kind of protection Harry is demanding either. So it's not as though he's being left without security. The reality is that Harry just doesn't think what's being offered is good enough. But Taz, I'm sure you'll agree with me, and it's great to have you on because there's so much happening today. This situation has now become genuinely worrying. The mainstream media mostly brushes it aside or pretends it's nothing. But we now have evidence for the second year running that Harry has either directly or indirectly suggested the British royal family, or even the so-called British deep state, is trying to have him killed. He's even claiming that details about Buckingham Palace were deliberately made public as some sort of plot to undermine his security. At this stage, you have to wonder what's going on. These kinds of briefings deserve to be challenged, not repeated without question. I know Jack Royston is trying to present both sides, but these claims are completely detached from reality. And then he says, "It's not my father." So let's follow that logic. According to Harry, it's the people surrounding King Charles, people employed by him and carrying out his responsibilities, who are supposedly trying to put Harry's safety at risk. That's the argument he expects people to believe.
He threw a tantrum because he lost again. And then he went straight into the BBC and they did that interview and they've had to apologize because they did no pushback.
At the very same time, though, you had people insisting that Harry wants to reconcile with his father. Yet in that exact interview, he was effectively accusing his father. I actually went back and watched the clip again to refresh my memory, and Harry was saying things like, "My father needs to step aside. My father needs to allow people to do their jobs." He even suggested, in so many words, that his father was preventing the proper security assessment from taking place. Then, in that same interview, he claimed there are people within the royal household who want him, his wife, and his children to be harmed. So when you put all of those comments together, what Harry is really saying is, I want to reconcile with my family, but I also believe members of that same family are involved in a plot to have me hurt. It's completely irrational. This is why I think Harry's latest change of direction is just another massive temper tantrum. They confirmed they were coming through those ridiculous operational notes and public itineraries they insist on releasing. Then, within about 24 hours, suddenly the trip was off. Almost immediately, there were briefings to all the usual media outlets claiming that the royal household was somehow involved again. Once again, the story became that people working at Buckingham Palace and even inside Prince William's office were somehow responsible. ITV even ran a piece claiming Harry believes members of Prince William's staff now sit on the RAVEC committee, and that's supposedly why he didn't get the security arrangements he wanted. These are the claims of someone who is not only throwing another temper tantrum, but also someone whose thinking appears increasingly detached from reality. At this point, I think the king should seriously reconsider meeting with him. Harry's delusions seem to be getting worse. Now he's claiming Prince William's staff are somehow behind all of this as well. Honestly, the best way I can describe it is that the cheese is sliding off the cracker. It's becoming more concerning by the day, absolutely, Taz. And to be fair to Jack Royston, he is at least trying to inject a little common sense into the briefings he receives from the Sussex camp. He's not outright saying this is completely crazy, the way we probably would, but he is beginning to point out the obvious. What he does explain, though, is why Harry's fears about the practical side of this visit simply don't make sense. Just watch. For Harry to genuinely be at risk, there would have to be some sort of attack on his vehicle as it left the gates of Buckingham Palace and traveled towards Northamptonshire. Unless there were riots or some completely unprecedented situation unfolding outside the palace, that scenario is virtually impossible. Britain isn't a country where roadside bombs or IEDs are a normal threat. Risk is managed in many different ways. It isn't simply about having an armed police officer standing next to you at every moment. A lot of it comes down to avoiding genuinely dangerous situations in the first place. Take Harry and Meghan's visit to Colombia. At the time, plenty of people questioned how they could travel there if London was supposedly too dangerous. I actually thought some of those comments were unfair to Colombia because, in reality, their trip there was perfectly safe. But the same is true of London. London is also perfectly safe. You simply avoid areas or situations that present unnecessary risks, just as you would anywhere else. And I do think that's a very fair point. King Charles drives out of Buckingham Palace on a regular basis whenever he's in London. A simple drive from the palace is hardly some extraordinary danger. But Taz, as both you and I have said before, there's an incredibly straightforward solution if Harry is genuinely worried about security. Fly over privately, don't tell the photographers, transfer by helicopter, don't tell the photographers, travel to a private estate, don't tell the photographers, carry out your engagements quietly, without announcing where you're going, what you're doing, or when you'll be there. Nobody would know, and frankly, nobody would care. That's the key point. If security is truly your biggest concern, why on earth would you release detailed operational notes? Taylor Swift doesn't publish her travel schedule for every media outlet to see before she arrives somewhere. And then there's the issue of the children, which is where I believe they were used as leverage. Personally, I don't think the children were ever meant to come. That's just my own opinion. We only heard about them being included right at the last minute. Originally, it was simply Harry making the trip, and then only a few weeks before the planned visit, suddenly the children were part of the story. If Harry already knew he had to give 30 days' notice for security arrangements, then announcing the children only a few weeks beforehand never really added up.
My feeling is that he introduced them to increase the pressure because he already suspected RAVEC wasn't going to give him the outcome he wanted. The thinking may well have been, let's say the children are coming. They don't actually have to travel because once the security package is approved, it's approved. Then, according to my own gut feeling over the weekend, RAVEC essentially responded by saying, it doesn't matter whether your children are coming or not. You are perfectly safe within palace grounds, and you do not require the additional level of protection you're demanding. Which is exactly why he's thrown yet another huge tantrum. But honestly, these are the ramblings of someone who appears increasingly unhinged. If King Charles was genuinely considering meeting Harry again, I can only imagine he's now looking at all of this and thinking, I want absolutely nothing to do with it. The palace has been enjoying a real boost lately. The king has released his tax information. Catherine continues to receive enormous public support, especially after taking part in that Three Peaks Challenge, and the royal family, overall, are having a very positive year. Prince William has also disclosed the amount of tax he pays, showing a level of transparency people have been calling for. The monarchy is in a strong position right now. If Charles gets drawn back into Harry's toxic drama, though, it risks undoing a lot of that goodwill. Many people already believe the king looks weak whenever he gives in to his son, and another meeting would only reinforce that perception. She's an absolute rock star, Taz. There's no doubt about it, and I definitely want to talk about that in a moment. But before we move on, Harry is apparently still struggling to accept that he's effectively been frozen out of the FIFA World Cup. As I reported a couple of weeks ago, there was no invitation because the organizers want David Beckham to be the face of the tournament. Then, out of nowhere, James Corden announced on his World Cup program that Harry would be appearing as a guest. What makes it so embarrassing is the context. They had just spent an entire segment debating the greatest British people named Harry, with names like Rio Ferdinand and even James Corden's dad joining in. The overwhelming conclusion? Prince Harry wasn't number one. Most people picked either Harry Potter or Harry Styles. What's even more awkward is that James Corden didn't jump in to defend his friend. He didn't say, no, Prince Harry should top the list. Instead, he simply announced that Harry would be joining the show later so they could discuss it together. Which means Harry will inevitably have to put on that humble act. Oh no, of course I'm not the best Harry. Harry Styles is much more popular than me. Just watch. Sponsor segment. But now back to the show. So yes, Prince Harry is genuinely scheduled to appear on the program in a few weeks' time. We'll cover the whole thing properly when it airs. Harry Meghan Spare summed it up rather bluntly. Of course Harry is appearing on James Corden's new TV show. Bullies always seem to stick together, so it's the perfect pairing. They also compared Meghan Markle and Chrissy Teigen, describing them as two of a kind. And Taz, you made another interesting point. You suggested Harry isn't exactly thrilled about constantly being overshadowed by his brother. With Prince William serving as patron of the Football Association, it suddenly seems as though Harry has discovered a brand new passion for football purely because it attracts attention. It's all rather embarrassing, really. He couldn't secure an official World Cup role because the organizers have clearly backed David Beckham and don't want the negativity Harry brings. So instead, he ends up appearing on James Corden's show alongside a collection of Z-list celebrities. It really does feel like scraping the bottom of the barrel. And honestly, when have we ever seen Harry showing any genuine interest in football? He's been spotted at high-profile NBA games, celebrity-filled baseball matches, and other major sporting events. The last football match I can actually remember him attending was that LA Galaxy game. I think it was when Lionel Messi was playing. It was a huge occasion. The Beckhams were there, while Harry was sitting up in the stands. If I remember correctly, Will Ferrell eventually wandered over to chat with him, and Harry immediately started playing up for the cameras. That's honestly the last time I can recall seeing Harry at any football-related event. He's not genuinely interested in football. The real motivation is trying to one-up his brother and imitate whatever Prince William happens to be doing. Remember when William had a go at football punditry? I can just picture Harry keeping a little checklist somewhere. Right, William's done this. I'd better do that too. Just like Meghan is probably sitting there trying to figure out how she can be photographed climbing a mountain or maybe skiing down one just to recreate Catherine's latest moment. Didn't William do that dragon boat race in Canada as well? Oh, what a perfectly timed clip. Honestly, you couldn't have planned it better. Just wait, Meghan will probably end up releasing a heavily edited picture of the children having a picnic on top of Mount Everest or something. Speaking of Catherine's 3 Peaks challenge, I don't know whether I've just become incredibly soft this week, but every time I see footage from it, it genuinely makes me emotional. I'm honestly not exaggerating. There's just something about this whole walk. She's such a remarkable person. And then it happened again. First of all, I have to show you some of the latest photographs because they're absolutely fantastic. Belle posted, absolutely loving all these photos of Catherine meeting people during her 3 Peaks hike this weekend. Her warmth and positive energy always shine through. We've also got another new video, Taz. Take a look. And then another clip came in, and look who appears. It's James Middleton, Catherine's brother. What made it even more touching was seeing that old photograph of Catherine and James reaching the summit together as children. That really got to me. Then Muriel Gray posted, whether you're a royalist, a Republican, or couldn't care less, this wasn't just about recognizing those who support cancer patients. It also created unforgettable memories for the people she met. Just look at Catherine's expression. Then the BBC interviewed young Ted, the little boy in the wheelchair who had that wonderful photo with Catherine, and I'm not ashamed to admit it got me all over again. Ted and his dad were already doing something extraordinary, taking on Britain's 3 highest peaks with the help of friends. Then, completely unexpectedly, they crossed paths with Catherine. Ted said that at first he didn't realize who she was, but once it clicked, he thought it was one of the greatest moments of his life, and it wasn't just a quick hello. Catherine stopped to chat with them, She even joked that Ted looked far too cold while everyone else was still walking around in t-shirts. She was clearly moved by what they were doing. When Ted and his family returned home, they discovered Catherine had left them a personal message and made a donation to their charity, Molly Ollies. Then they showed the Molly Ollies mascot bear, the one designed to help children going through chemotherapy when they lose their hair. Honestly, that completely finished me. Ted then said he thought it was one of the best moments anyone could ever have, and now he's already thinking about taking on Everest next. At that point, I was gone. I genuinely couldn't hold it together. I know, Taz, I was exactly the same when I watched it. Between Ted, Catherine, James Middleton being there, the whole thing was just incredibly special. And what makes it even better is how natural it all felt. Obviously, the challenge itself had to be organized in advance, but none of these encounters were staged or carefully choreographed. They simply happened. It's such a contrast to seeing Harry and Meghan rolling people into the foyer of a children's hospital for a carefully managed photo opportunity. Catherine's interactions felt completely authentic. She was simply happy to stop and talk to whoever she met along the way. It didn't matter whether cameras were rolling or not. It was just wonderful to watch. It really has been the palate cleanser everyone needed. The reason people respond so warmly to Catherine is because she's genuinely like this. Nothing ever feels forced or manufactured. She isn't constantly searching for the nearest camera. In fact, I honestly think there are times she doesn't even realize she's being filmed because she isn't looking for it. Every conversation you see her having is warm, sincere, and welcoming. Whether she's speaking to elderly people, young children, or complete strangers, she gives them her full attention because she genuinely cares about what they have to say. That's why people connect with her so naturally. By comparison, Meghan seems to treat people more like props. It's impossible not to notice the difference. Catherine is focused entirely on the person standing in front of her, whereas Meghan often appears more aware of where the cameras are positioned, making sure she's being photographed from the right angle or recreating another Diana-style pose. You can almost see her mind constantly calculating the optics of every moment. I think that's why so many people struggle to connect with Meghan. She isn't truly connecting with the people around her. As for Catherine's entire Three Peaks challenge, it really is remarkable when you think about everything she's been through. It was only 2 years ago that she had to appear before the world earlier than she ever wanted to, sitting on that bench and revealing that she had been diagnosed with cancer. There have also been a number of people Catherine has highlighted during her hospital visits, including the young photographer Liz Hatton, who was battling cancer at the time. Sadly, Liz is no longer with us. It's a powerful reminder that a cancer diagnosis can take many different paths, and not everyone is fortunate enough to come through it. That's why seeing Catherine now, just a couple of years later, completing this challenge, being welcomed by her family at the finish, and meeting so many inspirational people raising money for worthy causes was incredibly moving. It really was the kind of uplifting story the world needed right now. Personally, I already admired Catherine, but this has taken my respect for her to another level. It's genuinely remarkable. She's an extraordinary person. Beautifully said, Taz. Absolutely beautifully said. And speaking of much-needed palate cleansers, Prince William has also been busy with his homelessness initiative. There was a lovely moment, captured by the royal rogue, while he was helping staff at Langstane Housing Association put together welcome packs for new tenants. The event marked 3 years since the launch of his Homewards project. During the visit, there was a funny little exchange. If you listen carefully, you'll hear William joke. Some of us don't need hairdryers. That's what I love about him, Taz. He's laughing at himself. Exactly. It's a completely genuine laugh, and he's more than happy to poke fun at his own baldness. You can only imagine how much fun that family has together behind closed doors. It's hardly surprising that the children have developed such confident personalities, and that Prince Louis, in particular, has become such an entertaining little character. They genuinely seem to enjoy each other's company. They laugh together, joke together, and simply come across as a happy family. As royal watchers, they're a joy to observe. I also think that's one of the reasons people have developed such affection for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. We've watched them grow up, seen their personalities emerge, and shared those little family moments that William and Catherine occasionally allow the public to see. Whether it's William making a joke or Catherine interacting naturally with people, those glimpses reveal a completely different side of the royal family. I honestly think it has played a huge role in modernizing the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth modernized the institution in her own way, but William and Catherine have found the perfect balance for today's world. Social media is such a major part of modern life, and they've recognized that simply releasing formal portraits or official press statements isn't enough anymore. They've adapted brilliantly, especially when it comes to raising their children in the public eye. As a result, the public has developed a genuine affection not just for William and Catherine individually, but for the Wales family as a whole. Those relaxed moments, sharing a laugh, making jokes, and not taking themselves too seriously, sit comfortably alongside their ability to welcome world leaders and carry out major constitutional duties. It presents a much more rounded picture of the modern monarchy, one that people perhaps haven't seen before. I think that's a big reason why support for the royal family, and particularly the Wales family, continues to grow. Now, Taz, we do have to move on to the upcoming Prince Harry and Meghan Markle trip because, despite everything, it bizarrely appears to still be going ahead. What's even more interesting is that it already looks as though they're planning ways around these new so-called media rules. There are already 2 occasions where camera crews are expected to be following Harry, Meghan, and their family while they're in the UK. We've got all the details, so we're going to continue that conversation over on Substack, where we'll break everything down. You can join us at Outspoken Live. Monthly and annual subscribers get early access to the full after show, completely ad-free, and you can either watch live or catch up whenever it suits you. Most importantly, your support allows me to continue producing truly independent reporting outside the mainstream media and free from the influence of the royal rota. I hope to see you there. Dan Wooten Outspoken is your home for independent news with no spin, no bias, and no censorship. There are no billionaires or big tech companies pulling the strings behind this channel, but that also means I rely on your support. So if you enjoy the content, please subscribe here on YouTube, switch on the notification bell, and help me continue delivering the independent reporting I've always promised. It's completely free, but it makes a huge difference.